Hey guys, welcome to this week's lesson segment on Weekly Outdoor Plus. Jase Hintz here with you as always, and this week I'm going to go over with you guys how to pick the perfect shaft for when you're shooting either spots or 3D archery, because it's getting to be that time of year again. First couple tournaments are starting this weekend already, so you got to make sure that you have your setup as best as you can get it, especially if you are buying new arrows or if you just have existing arrows but a new bow, or you're increasing your poundage. All that's going to make a big difference. If you're growing up, you're going to have different draw lengths and stuff like that, so you got to make sure that you have the right arrow shaft and fletchings and nock and tip for your setup. The big things is I just set mine up like 2 days ago, and the big thing is you got to first of all know how many pounds you're going to be shooting, because that's very crucial in how long you're going to cut them and what weight tip you're going to put in the front, so that you can get the perfect spine for your arrow, for your setup. And what I did is I actually set up, I knew I wanted to shoot 56 pounds for indoors this year for my 3D and my spots. So what I did ahead of time is I figured out what shaft I needed, how thick of a shaft I wanted, because I'm going to be shooting it for 3D and I want to make sure that I have a little bit thicker one so I can catch more lines, and it's just going to be a lot better off if you do have little flaws, that it'll help out catching the little flaws. But what I did was I picked out mine, I got everything set up, and then I actually went on the computer and I typed in everything that I had set up. I knew I wanted 4-inch feathers. I like feathers on indoors because there's no weather, there's no rain like we were talking about where it's going to make your feathers shrink. There's not a lot of wear and tear on them really. You're shooting one arrow at a different target all the time. You're not shooting your feathers and getting them all broken up and everything. So I got my 4-inch feathers, I got my actual shaft that I wanted, and then what I did was I typed it all in on the computer and I figured out what I would need to have or how long I need to cut it for 56 pounds at 29-inch draw length. What I ended up cutting mine at was 29 inches. And the reason I did that was because, one, it's a little bit longer, which I like to have a little bit longer, just because if I do end up wanting to cut it shorter or I go up in weight, it's going to make my arrow weaker, which means if I make it weaker, obviously I need to cut it a little shorter, and that's one easy fix. The other one is I put 100 grain tips in the front, and simply going from 100 to 112 grains, if I did an insert, you'd be looking at, 4 feet a second, which a lot of people worry about, but that half-inch I would cut off, I'd only gain 1 foot. So is it really worth cutting these arrows as short as I could possibly make them so I can get that extra 3 feet a second? In my opinion, no. You'd rather shoot way more accurately, obviously. So you got to figure out exactly how you want it set up for your length. Then you can go with your tip weight. Once you know your tip weight, again, you can get pretty much any weight you're looking for. You can go all the way down to like 80, I've gone down to 75 grains. You can go all the way up to 300 grains if you're shooting your spots, big, thick arrows. The thicker the arrow, the diameter, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have more stiffer shaft at all. It doesn't mean you have a weaker shaft. It could all make a big difference. I have some arrows that'll fit 3 inside of my spots arrows, and they're actually way stiffer than my spots arrows are. The only reason that is because it's not how round it is, it's how thick the wall of it is. And that's where you get your 250, 350, that's where you get your 400, 500, depending what brand you're shooting. All those are going to make a difference. So once you get your arrow shaft selected, you got to make sure you cut it to the correct length for your poundage and your draw length. And then you also have to have the right weight of point in there, because your point weight, if you go 50 grains up or down, it's going to make a huge difference on the spine of your arrow. And when I'm talking the spine of your arrow, it's going to be how consistently you're hitting in the same spot. If you do have them set up correctly, it's going to be a lot more consistent arrow to arrow. You could shoot one arrow consistent all the time, but if you have a whole group or a whole dozen of them and you want them to be consistent, make sure you set them all up exactly the same and know what you can do for it. That's another way we talked about, like walk back tuning, going up and down with your poundage when you're group tuning at different distances. When you're group tuning and you go up and down in your weights, that's going to make a big difference on your spine of your arrow. And that's basically what you're trying to find when you're doing that also, is getting your arrow perfectly spined by, going an extra pound on there will make a big difference. If it's going to get, you add a pound, it's going to make it weaker. You lose a pound, it's going to make it stiffer. And if you don't know exactly what you need, that's one way to figure it out. Otherwise, stop into Bucks and Bulls. We have a great program that you can set it up on, and it'll even tell you what your different shaft options would be. Or you can say, hey, what if I bought this shaft? Could I make it work for my setup? Another option. So definitely, if you're going to be shooting any 3D this winter or even spots, make sure you got a nice tuned arrow. All right, if you have any questions, stop in. We'd be more than happy to help you. Send us an email or Facebook message us, and it'd be great to help you out. And hopefully I'll see you guys on the range this year.